Hello guys, welcome to DW Designs. I'm your host Derek, and on this week's episode we're going to be doing basics on MIG welding. So the machine we're going to be using today is this Miller 211. It is a phenomenal machine for the garage hobbyist or even in a shop like yours or like mine. I highly recommend this machine to anybody who's looking to purchase a MIG welder. I am not sponsored by Miller, but I will say that it is a great machine and have had little to no issues with this machine at all. We'll be going over the basics on how this machine works, and then we'll dive into the basics of MIG welding. Now, for those of you who don't know, the gas that is in this bottle is a mix. It is 75% argon to 25% CO2, and that's what creates just the right gas mixture for welding, and it comes out beautiful. Also, not to mention, MIG stands for metal inert gas. Keep that in mind, guys. You might blow somebody away by telling them that. Okay guys, so now we're looking at the front of the Miller 211. Now I forgot to mention this earlier, but this machine is also a 110 machine. You can plug this into your average wall socket in your house and use it if you need to. However, if you need to use the higher amperage outputs, you're gonna have to have 220 in order to do it. But as you can see, this is a very basic machine. Only two knobs and one switch here in the front. The top knob adjusts the wire feeds and speeds. Down here adjusts your heat. I know it's not technically heat, but your amperage. So the reason why I put it in heat, so some of you guys will understand it better that way than others. So right now I have it on 3/8 thick metal. I love this machine because it automatically puts on here what thickness it can weld at, and that's a great setting to have. Now, if you turn this knob all the way to where the blue or the green is, the difference is green is 030 wire and the blue is 035 wire. It's auto set, which means it automatically sets your wire feeds and speeds as you weld. I do not personally like using this setting. I will explain that later on in this video, so make sure you guys stay tuned and I'll explain that. Next up here is the switch here. What that does is that switches it from a spool gun if you're going to be welding aluminum, or your regular MIG handle that comes with the machine. So obviously you have your MIG line here, and then your ground cable hooks up just right here. Okay, so your on and off switch is on the back of this machine. Right there. Very simple, nothing complicated, kind of hidden, which is nice, keeps you from accidentally bumping it on and leaving it on. It is a little bit noisy, so it's not like you turn it on, you're not going to hear it like the TIG welders, but this machine will make a little noise when you turn it on. Now, another important thing is here's your gas valve. Make sure it's always closed when you're not using it, otherwise you will lose gas if you have a small leak. And gas, my friends, is not cheap. It probably costs about 50, 60 bucks to fill this bottle up. So just keep that in mind, guys. Okay guys, so you just bought your Miller. You're very excited. I shouldn't be biased, I shouldn't say Miller, but you guys just bought your MIG welder and you guys are ready to go. These are the things you have to have, you guys. You need to have a good helmet. I cannot stress that enough. I'll go into detail about that in a sec. A good heavy pair of welding gloves, some good wire cutters, a good barbecue or stainless steel brush with the scraper on the end. This is an option. You don't have to get this, but this is a little welding cap that you put on your head before you start welding with your hood on, because otherwise what will happen is occasionally you'll get a hot ember, it lands in your head and can catch your hair on fire and it burns and it sucks. And then get yourself a good welding jacket, guys. My welding jacket was $60. So, you know, don't skimp out on that. It's a very important thing to protect your skin. Very important, guys. I can't stress that enough. Safety first. And not to mention a good welding helmet. I know I said that a couple minutes ago, but here's the thing, guys. So I bought a cheap, inexpensive welding helmet and I was using it for a while, and at first it was great, you know, no problem whatsoever. But then I got to welding every single day, and I ended up getting floaters in my eyes because the light was still penetrating through the helmet to the point where I now have a slight issue with my eyes because of that. But it's not the end of the world. But just keep that in mind, guys. A good helmet will go a long way, and your eyes are worth protecting. This helmet here runs for about $300 new, so I would recommend this one, you guys, compared to this other one. Let me grab it for you. This one's the top of the line model. I would not recommend buying that for MIG welding because, like I said, it will get ruined a little bit. As you can see, all the pits and spatter on the hood lens, versus this one I do not. This is only used for TIG welding. I refuse to use it for anything else. So just keep that in mind, guys. Okay, now that we went over the basics of what you need, let's suit up, get this thing plugged in, and let's start burning some metal. Okay guys, now we're all ready to go. Granted, I will say, if it's the middle of August in Southern California like it is right now, putting all this gear on is gonna suck. You're gonna hate it with a passion, but it's necessary so you guys don't get burnt. Believe me, I've been down that road where I try to get every way around it by wearing, you know, short sleeve shirts and not wearing the gear and everything, and every time you get burned pretty bad usually. So, you know, just take the extra precautions, guys. Before we dive into welding, we're gonna go over the basic settings on everything on the welder: gas, feeds and speeds, and amperage. Now, when it comes to gas settings, you want to be anywhere between 10 to 15 CFH. You don't want to go too high, because if you do, you'll actually blow your own gas away to the point where you get really bad porosity, and just, you know, awful things happen when your gas is too high. Generally speaking, for steel, which was what we're going to be working with today, 10 to 15 CFH. If you're going to be doing aluminum with a spool gun, you might bump that up a little bit to like 17, 18, maybe 20, depending on the circumstances, but you don't want to get, like I said, your gas too high, otherwise you just create problems. And before I forget, you're supposed to check it when you hold the trigger down. So I'm going to hold the trigger down, and it's probably going to drop a little bit to about 14. Yep, so I'm going to go ahead and bump it up to 15. All right, let's dive into feeds and speeds. So right now I have it set at 70. This was a preset that I set on the machine prior to this video when I welded that cage that you guys saw in the beginning of this video. But what we want to do is, I'm going to show you guys what it's like to weld too slow at 10 with the amperage all the way set to 10 or 3/8 thick steel, and I'll play a video of that now. See how that was too slow, guys? We don't want that. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna bump this all the way up to 100. Same amperage settings, didn't change a thing. I'm gonna play that now. See how that was too fast? You don't want it that fast. It's just way too fast. It's shooting out too many sparks, too many of those little tags, I call them, that go flying everywhere, that stick to every piece of metal known to man. And then we're going to turn it down to 70, and I want you to see that. That is about right, guys, right there. It's also a listening and feel thing. You guys, it's all personal preference if you like it a little bit faster or a little bit slower, but it really comes down to what you guys like and what sound it's making. You guys can tell if it's going too fast or too slow by just by listening to it. If you guys want to listen to it again, just go back in the clip and listen again to the differences, so that way you guys get a better idea on how you need to set up your MIG welder. Now, on this MIG welder and on others, they have this auto set feature that I talked about in the beginning of this video. Here's the reason why I do not like using that. I personally like to pulse weld, guys, which means, you know, I use my finger to pulse the machine, because this does not have an auto pulse system. And with that, the auto feed has a tendency to change its feed rate occasionally when I'm working with it. and it really messes up my groove, and then I get an inconsistent weld like it should be. So I like to fine tune it to the point where when I pulse weld, it's like the perfect feed and speed rate just for me. May not work for some of you guys, but for me it works great. When you're first starting out, you might, turn the amperage down just a little bit and then slow the wire speed down just a little bit, so that way you guys can keep up with it. But because I've been doing this for a while and practicing a lot to the point where I can just go all the way full speed on everything and get the job done a lot quicker. So just be patient with yourself, guys, and it's all about practice and learning your machine very well. Okay, now you guys got your wire feeds and speeds dialed in. Let's go ahead and jump into amperage. So here we go with the amperage. This steel we're going to be working with today is 120 wall DOM round steel, and we have 1/8 inch plate steel as well. I like to personally weld at 3/8 of an inch or 10 on the scale for the voltage, and that's going to use the full 220 set. So you have to have your 220 in your house or a plug somewhere for that, rather than the 110 that this machine offers. So I like to weld a little hotter because I move faster. But if you guys are starting out, you're going to probably put it on the setting that it needs to be. So, 1/8 of an inch thick steel is what we're going to be working with. But for me, it's going to be too slow, so I'm going to leave it at 3/8 of an inch. Now, for those of you who have a MIG welder that doesn't have the presets on it that say, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, or whatever the thickness of material or gauge that you guys are using, then for 1/8 inch, which is what we're going to be doing today, you're going to be probably around 150 to 170 amps if you guys don't have what you guys just saw on your MIG welder. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also, guys, I'm really interested to know, what is your favorite settings on 1/8 inch plate steel or tubing? If you guys have a preference, leave a comment in the section down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right, so we're ready to weld, guys. So we're gonna do several different techniques here. We're gonna do pulse welding, we're gonna do continuous snail, we're gonna do continuous ease, and you guys will see what the different outcomes are on a piece of flat plate steel. And by the way, this is 1/8 inch thick, and the tubing we're going to be doing next is also 1/8 inch thick. I have my wire feeds and speeds set at 70 and my amperage set at 3/8 of an inch, which is going to be roughly close to 200 amps on this machine because I like to weld a little bit faster and hotter. All right, so let's go. All right, there's sample one. Sample two will be snail. Just to pull the trigger and drag. Pretty straightforward, simple. Next up, we're going to do some ease. All right, so here's the different styles of welding. You have your ease. And what I mean by ease, I mean like imagine a cursive E, and you just keep doing that all the way down. This is just a drag, like a snail, and then this is your pulse. I myself particularly like to pulse weld. I get nicer welds and I can generally go faster for myself. But I mean, everyone has their own preferences. You guys have to figure out what you prefer depending on the circumstances. Let's just say you had a piece of 3/8 thick metal and you needed to get full penetration on it. Well, you may not be able to pulse with this machine because you need that full pen. That means you're going to have to do a non-stop weld. So you might have to do ease to be able to get that full pen and then still make it look pretty nice. I've had to do that to several different projects in the past, but if I can, I'm gonna pulse weld. Let's have some fun and pulse weld this T together. Not perfect, but came out pretty nice. So once this piece cools down and I'm able to touch it and handle it, I'm gonna show you guys the proper amount of penetration that the steel should have on the inside, as well as explain the heat signature around the weld when it's too hot or if it's too cold. So you guys have a good idea if you're doing it correctly or not. Now that the piece is cool, let's go into checking out what the heat signature is. So as you can see here, we have from the middle of the weld down to here is about 1 inch. And from here up to here is about 1/2 inch. It's actually a really, really good heat signature. If this was to wrap around the tube to the other side, you've gotten it too hot and your piece is no longer good, because what's going to happen is that's going to affect the structural integrity of this piece of steel, and it will no longer withstand harsh movement in like a roll cage or anything like that. It'll crack and bust on you, and it's not a good thing, and it will not pass inspection either. Now granted, most inspection people don't necessarily always look at this. They like to use x-ray machines and stuff like that. But if you don't have that, you know, this is the kind of the best way you can tell, is making sure that your heat is just right and your penetration on the inside is just right. So now let me show you guys what it needs to look like on the inside. Just before I dive into what it looks like on the inside, I want to make a quick note with you guys. So when you just weld it, it's a little bit more colorful than it is right now because I wire brushed it. You can see the blues and purples in there. It's the dark, really, really dark gray that you guys want to watch out for. If your dark gray comes all the way down here, and then that means your blue would be down here, you've also ruined it. So just keep that in mind. Just watch out for that. Don't get it too hot. Now we're gonna look on the inside. So as you can see inside there, you got a little ring that's shaped just like the fish-mouthed tube to the other one. And as you can see inside there, it's just barely starting to poke through. If you guys get bubbles inside where it looks like it did go all the way through, that's not a good sign, because what'll happen is that could get porosity in it, and that can actually create a weak spot and a potential place for it to crack as well, because you've got contaminants in it. So this is the perfect amount of penetration. So like I said, if you guys see bubbles coming through, or it looks like an actual bubble, in this case we're good, we don't have any. You have your settings and your feeds and speeds and your personal moving speed just right. Alrighty guys, this will conclude this episode. I hope you guys got some great information out of it. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe. I'd love to have you guys a part of the DW Designs team. If you guys want to follow me on social media, it's at DW_designs_fabrication. You guys can find me there. Thank you very much for joining me today. God bless, and see you guys next week.